Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you've never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 142 of Sports Cards Live. It is Tuesday night, May the 31st, 2022. My name is Jeremy Lee. I do want to thank Spinatron for joining the show this past Saturday. It was another great episode with great feedback from all of you. So thanks to him and for everybody for watching and being engaged in the chat. We had a great show. Want to let you all know as a reminder, no episode this Saturday. I will be at the Sport Card Expo in Toronto, but I will be back the Tuesday after, a week today, for episode 2 of the Tag Grading Company Reveal series. I want to shout out the Center Stage app. Download their app for quick comps, whether you are strolling through card shows or pricing your cards. If you are a vendor, the app is continuously improving. So join me in supporting these hobbypreneurs as they endeavor to make the hobby better than it already is. And I'd also like to, again, introduce a new channel supporter, Pristine Auction. PristineAuction.com is one of the most trusted sport memorabilia and collectibles auction sites. Auctions on PristineAuction.com start at just $1. And each day there are thousands of autographed items available. They also sell thousands of sports cards, starting with no reserves in their weekly sports card auction that runs Sunday to Sunday. It has everything from vintage to ultra modern, including raw and graded singles and wax. Head over to PristineAuction.com, use code SCL, and when you sign up and get $10 off your first purchase. I want to thank all of you subscribers, all you viewers, all the podcast listeners. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please take a moment and go ahead and do so. Let's get to tonight's guest. He started in the hobby in 1951, opening packs of baseball cards on the street curb at the age of 5. He's collected his whole life, and he started Tag in February 2012. He has spent the last 10 years developing the system and building his team, who we will also meet throughout these 5 episodes. His favorite athlete is Sandy Koufax, and his favorite teams are the Nebraska Cornhuskers and the LA Dodgers. While he spent his earliest years in Los Angeles, he spent his teenage years in Newark, New Jersey, and currently hails from Los Angeles, California. Let's bring him out. Steve Kass, welcome to Sports Cards Live. How are you?
I'm great, Jeremy. Thank you for that kind introduction.
You're welcome.
Let me just say to everybody out there, go Big Red. I am a Cornhuskers fan. I wanted to, if I could, take a minute to thank all of the co-founders. While I'm in front of the camera right now, there's a lot of people that have put me here. Hard work and commitment to the company. And also to the employees. That same commitment runs throughout our company. And without the work that the employees do, I wouldn't be here either. So thanks to those people. And thank you, Jeremy. It's been almost a year now since I met you. And it's an ever-growing relationship, and a relationship that, for me, continues to give me an insight into you with a lot of respect and admiration. I appreciate more than ever the chance to reveal our company on your site. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate those kind words. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you and the team as well. Let's why don't we talk about that? How did we come together, and why are we, and why did you decide to do these 5 reveal episodes on Sports Cards Live with myself and the Sports Cards Live community?
In last year at the National Convention, July, our team went to Chicago, and unlike other conventions that I'd been to, which were many, this one I went with the specific purpose of meeting identified individuals, people that we identified as being important to our business. And at that time in July, we knew that we were within 6, 10, 12 months of launching the company, and we wanted to reach out to some people. So we put a booklet together of 24 people, their background information, why they were in the book, and you were there. And we saw you. You were sitting on a stool. You were surrounded by people. It was difficult to get up to you. And I got up to you, and I kind of leaned over between the people that were there and whispered to you that I had something that was really important to me to talk to you about. Was there a way we could do it more privately? And you shortly got up and stepped aside, and we went into a different area of your booth there. And we showed you a video of what we were doing, and we showed you parts of the study that we had done and told you about it. And ever since then, you and I have remained in contact. In March, I think it was, of this year, you said to me on a phone call, I'd really like to come down to LA and see for myself what we've been talking about, what I've seen on video. And you came down here. I think we spent 3 days together, as I recall, from the afternoon of, let's say, a Wednesday until Friday or Saturday. I think you might have stayed until. And we had a great time, a lot of conversation. And you met the entire management team. And from there, it evolved into our having a conversation about, would we consider doing our reveal on your show? And of course, we were thrilled to have that opportunity.
So I've been to the office. I've been where you're sitting, but I have to admit, I can't picture in my head where exactly you are. Are you in this is the office? Whereabouts are you sitting right now?
Yes, I'm in the office. It has changed slightly since you were here. I'm actually in the lobby. The front doors are about, 20 feet from where I'm sitting. And then the suite wraps around, and what's throughout the suite are the components of the grading business, the grading process. As a matter of fact, if you hear a little background noise while we're on, I've asked people to run it as quietly as possible, but we are likely to have some machinery running right now as we're doing some grading. So I'm in the lobby, and I don't know if this tag sign was up when you were here, and it may have been slightly different without the black wall. I'm not sure.
Yeah. There was something that I did see. It's I was very impressed by the office, the facility. You guys have thought of every detail. I was very impressed. I can't overstate that. How impressed I was with everything at the office, at the facility, and with the whole team. Let's get into you a little bit. This is Meet the Founder. This is episode 1 of a 5-episode reveal series. So to the audience, I want to let you all know that, usually it's your comments and questions are in play. It's still going to be that way, but I'm going to not address any questions or comments that we are going to be addressing in future episodes. So I just want to put that out there right now. And trust me when I tell you, there's things you're going to want to ask today that we're not going to talk about. This is a reveal. So I ask for your patience as we get through the 5 episodes. And I can assure you that I think you'll be impressed every step of the way, as I was. Steve, on to you, though. You're the founder of TAG, and are you a collector yourself?
Yes. I kind of have a differing opinion about calling myself a collector. So if I may, let me take a minute to tell you why. I've been collecting since, as you said, I was 5 years old. The first set of cards I ever bought was a pack of 51 redbacks, and I have special memories of that moment. But I think that collectors often collect cards because they have a particular goal in mind, to fill a collection of a certain sort, whether it be by certain players, certain teams, certain rookies, certain series, certain types of cards. And I'm more of what I call a hobbyist. I love cards. I have a passion for cards, and I almost don't care. My whole life I have been interested in cards, and whatever the card was, at the moment I got it, I cherished that card. I don't ever recall thinking to myself, oh man, look at all these commons. I just love cards. So yes, I'm a collector, but I'm also a hobbyist.
How many cards would you say you own? Which is it's an interesting question, because people ask me that question, and I say I don't know, a few thousand, but it's really, I have some that aren't as important to me. With you, it seems to me like they're all important. So can you quantify?
Yeah, I in 2010 I retired, and I decided that I would, for the first time, take all of my cards and identify them, take them out of various storage bins. And I had about 80 of those plastic file boxes filled with cards. And, I wanted to put them in year order and sport and set and player and card numbers and etc. So I did. I spent almost 2 years organizing the collection, and it's about 430,000 cards at that time.
That's a big number, 430,000 cards. What are some of your favorites?
Well, my favorite card, I think I alluded to, my favorite card is that 51 Redbacks. It was Wally Westlake, and it was the first card I ever bought with my own money that I literally put my eyes on something I purchased. I did chores around the house. I had my heart set on buying cards. So that was the first card, and I will always hold that card in the highest esteem. It's in my heart. I have a special place in my heart for the 52 Topps mantle, and it's not because it's become what it is. It's that in 1958, my parents were divorced, and I had lived in Los Angeles until then, and I relocated with my father and moved to Newark, New Jersey. And it was not only a tremendous culture shock, but I gave up all my friends and all the things that one has when they're that age. And when I got to Newark, it required a lot of adjusting. I lived in the attic, literally, about a 150 square foot room in an attic in a 1,600 square foot house at my aunt's house. And all I had were my cards. I didn't have friends, didn't have people to talk to. Of course, we didn't have cell phones, didn't have a computer. And the cards took on a very important thing for me. And Koufax and the Dodgers were my favorite team and player when I left Los Angeles. But the Yankees became my favorite team during my time in Newark, because if you wanted to have friends and you were in the public school system in Newark, New Jersey, you were a Yankee fan. And Mickey Mantle was about as popular a player as ever existed. So I became a Mantle fan, and that card, that 52 Mantle, it causes me to reflect on the changes I went through in my life and how important baseball cards were to me. The 56 Koufax is a favorite card of mine. Wow, not the 55, the 56. And I do have, I do have 55s, but the 56, I love that action photo that's with the card as opposed to that 55 portrait, and that pitching motion. And, it became it's iconic. And while the picture doesn't show it, in real life, I'm sure Koufax often had dirt on his knee from his stretch prior to release, with his knee touching the ground. So I always liked that card and had a strong place for it in my heart. The 39 Hank Greenberg play ball, big card for me. I met Hank Greenberg. That was important to me. The circumstances that we met has special memory to me. But my dad gave me that 39 Greenberg on my bar mitzvah. And so that card, as one would expect, at least if they're familiar with Jewish faith and tradition, that card meant a lot to me. And other than baseball cards, which has always been my primary interest, I absolutely love the 58 Jimmy Brown. So, it's an iconic card. It's famous. It's valuable. It's a rookie. But what I love about that card is the black on that card and that circle that highlights the player image. And if you look carefully and you see Jimmy Brown and the lean as he's cutting to his left, it's only on a practice field, no helmet. But the move, when you see him leaning to his left, if you look at it long enough, and it doesn't take long, you can actually see the power in Jimmy Brown as a runner. And even as a rookie, he was a very, very feared running back. So those would be like my favorites. I could rattle off dozens of cards that have meaning to me.
Well, before we get into how you came to be the founder of Tag It, you've mentioned your father here today. You've mentioned your father in our conversations over the past several months. I want to give you the opportunity to speak to how he influenced you a little bit more detail with respect to having a passion for sports cards.
Yeah. Speaking of my dad's a very difficult thing for me. He's been gone for quite a while, 12 years or 15 years. He as many of us can attest, he was very tough. My dad was a military guy, Air Force. He was one of the youngest captains in the Air Force in his division or group or whatever. In World War II, he flew B-24, B-25 bombers. He didn't fly missions. My dad was so interested in doing things right and addressing the details of everything. He became an instructor, a B-24, B-25 instructor pilot. And my dad was the greatest athlete I ever saw. And I've seen some great ones. I saw Jordan, and I saw Magic, and I saw Kobe, and I saw Elgin. And I saw them live. I saw them all the time. My dad was the greatest athlete I've ever seen. He was 6'5", which was tall for his era. He was born in 1917. And he played basketball. He played football, track, baseball. He lost his parents when he was very young, and he had 2 sisters. And he committed when he was 12 or 13 years old to make sure that his family, his sisters and he, were not split up and living with relatives. And so he worked 2 jobs as a youngster, paid rent, and kept his family together. And I have a letter that my dad wrote in 1946 to his sisters while he was still in the Air Force. I had it. I no longer do. And he told them that never, ever compromise on your commitment. Be loyal to yourself. And he always taught me that. Set your sights high, but always reach to go higher. And so his love of sports, his commitment to detail. I was the kid that wasn't allowed to make my bed without a wrinkle in the blanket. With a wrinkle, he would come by and flip a coin. All those stories are true. So I've learned that details are important, and I got that from my dad. So I don't think there would be TAG had my dad not been my father.
Yeah, he sounds like a wonderful man, a great role model. Thank you for sharing all of that. I want to get into how your education has contributed to you becoming the founder of TAG. Can you take us through your education?
Sure. My dad always said that education is the most important thing. And, being from a family that were Holocaust survivors, my dad used to say, education, get it because it's something that nobody can ever take from you. And he instilled that in me. So I went to college and got a bachelor's degree. Went to Nebraska, of course, where they practically invented football. Went to California Western School of Law and got a JD degree. And from there, I went to Harvard Business School and got an MBA degree. I've been blessed with a good education. And I did it during a time of the Vietnam War, and education was so important. I was a pitcher when I was in high school, and I had opportunities to fulfill my dream, which was to play professional baseball. And I could have played or could have signed with the Giants or the Pirates. And because of the Vietnam War, and in those days, people won't probably know this, we had a draft. And a 2S was the deferment that you got for being a student. And so it was impressed upon me by my father that I was going to school whether I wanted to or not. So those are the education. That's what it was.
Yeah, so you've got some good credentials there. Starting a business from scratch, especially when it's technologically based, it must be very intimidating. I would think it's got to be intimidating. How do you think the analytical skills that you've developed through your education and your professional history, how have they helped you navigate these last 10 years of developing and building TAG?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's probably a lot of people that would have been better at doing this than me. So I don't lay claim to being, I'm the only person that could do this type of attitude. I think it took a lot of commitment and time, and you had to be willing to do that. But I've had a lot of experience at doing similar things. My very first job was strategic planning for TRW for a division, drilling and mining equipment. And I went my first day of work. They told me that 2 days later I was going to Europe. I was there for 3 months, and I put the strategic plan together for drilling equipment for Europe, the Mideast, and Africa. And I have always been the type of person that enjoyed putting together a business plan, understanding the elements of business. That job, after that, I became a vice president at an oil field a company called Stanco, and they were about a $60 million company. I was vice president of marketing. I was only there a year before I started the company, but during that year, I managed their presence at the Offshore Technology Conference, which was about 100,000 attendees. And so I've had some experience at putting together those types of shows and what's involved and how you establish the proper objectives for a show. I started a boutique consulting firm that we consulted on mergers and acquisitions. I put together business plans and would go out and find investors who would buy that company. Typically it involved companies. I did it for a company called Metropolitan Development was my first. I put the business plan together and I sold it to the Bellsberg family in Canada, up in your neck of the woods. From there, I did work for the McCarthy Company, and I did work for William Lyons, and I did work for a number of mortgage companies and real estate companies, financial companies, but always involving valuing assets in the context of creating business plans. So I was not unfamiliar with how to take a blank piece of paper and start to think about how you put a plan together. I had done it hundreds of times. I did start companies successfully, and I did work in companies that use technology, but I'm not a tech person. I'm a person who is, I think, very capable of identifying an objective and translating it into something that technology people can be chartered with the responsibility of building. And whereas technology people might possibly understand the technology better, but may not be as skilled as putting it into and translating it into a business plan.
Yeah.
So it's a good marriage.
Pardon?
It's a good marriage for me with technology.
Yeah. I want to also give you a chance because you're also someone who gives back to the community, and I know this because we've discussed it. The City of Hope. You're involved with the City of Hope. Can you just take a minute and just sort of I want, and again, this is about getting to know you. This is not about the details, episode 1 about tag yet. This is getting to know the founder. I think it's important. Can you speak to your involvement with the City of Hope and maybe let some people who may not know what it is understand what the City of Hope is?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question.
I know it's important to you.
Very important. I think I have 3 passions in my life. I have the one that I think almost everybody has, which is a passion for my family. My sister and my son are particularly important to me. My parents have been lost. I have a passion for cards, but equally important to me, and I'm equally passionate about, is the City of Hope. So it's lofty. The City of Hope is a national cancer center. It's both research and treatment. It's large, it's national, it's a nonprofit. It is, without a doubt, the most ethical, conscientious company, group of people you will ever meet, and all working toward a common goal, which is curing cancer and blood-related illness, disease. Diabetes is very big. And I've been on the board. I first joined the board in 1989, and I stayed on the board. And I think about 15 years ago, I am no longer actively on the board. I'm board emeritus. I continue to be on the finance committee, and it is the gift in my life that I've received have been introduced to the City of Hope. I encourage everybody to, when we get off this call, look up theCityofHope.org and read about it. I also would like to say that TAG will be contributing for every card that we grade. We will be making a donation to the City of Hope, and we will be doing that for the rest of my term here, however long.
Wonderful. Yeah, you're I can tell how passionate you are about it. I'm glad you had a chance to address that. Let's go back to creating the company and the technological basis of tag grading. How challenging has it been? And can you speak to any specific roadblocks or challenges that you've encountered over the last 10 years?
Wow.
We don't have all day, but
yeah, I'm going to not even include the skepticism and naysayer attitudes that I've heard since the beginning. Virtually every page of the book has naysayers. The technology is extremely complex, and part of the complexity, when you look at the entire software development, you see how much complexity there is. But it's even more complex than that, because when you're developing it, you don't get to see the entire software. And every time you work on a piece that's part of your business plan, that's something that you think of that you need, or that's an essential to grading, as you do it and you work on it, maybe for months and spend money and time, and then you find out that when you do it, it impacts on some other piece of the software, some other piece of the business plan. So it's an evolving thing, and very difficult. So some of the things that come to mind immediately are, what are the scoring attributes in a card? So, I mean, everybody says, oh, there's 4, we see them, we refer to them in the industry as subgrades. But there's so many other attributes in a card, and different types of defects, different locations, different sizes. Whether or not a defect is on a face, or the exact same defect occurs on another area of the card, and each of these are very, very complex. How do you center an image on a card? How do you center an image on a card when it's borderless? How do you center an image on a card when it's not only borderless, but there are no markers on the card? There's no manufacturer's name. There's no player. It's just, it's borderless with an image. And each of these is a challenge. Some of them we've reached into medical technology to identify and figure out resolution. Some of them we invented our own technology. We have 4 patents. We have 134 claims. We're just filing our 5th patent. Actually, it would be 2 more patents. One will be the 5th, and the other will be a continuation of an existing. And they'll probably include another 40 or 50 claims. So the essence of technology is that the more complex the problem you're trying to solve, the more complex the solution in the software development need be. I hope I'm answering it. I don't want to say too much, because we're going to show things in episodes 2, 3, and 4 that I believe will boggle people's minds. And I say that after a lot of years in the industry, and knowing and talking to a lot of people about grading. Innovation and creativity are going to be synonymous with the name tag.
Well, I mean, I can vouch for that, because I've seen it. I've seen the technology. I've been in the facility, and my mind was blown. Absolutely blown. So I look forward to episodes 2, 3, and 4, when the audience and the hobby can really be exposed to what it is that TAG has built. And I think there's going to be a lot of excitement. You know, a lot of what you talk about has to do with analytics, and again, you have to be analytical in what you're doing here. You mentioned a study before. When you set out to do this in 2012, did you prepare any study? Did you do anything to make sure that this was going to be a viable project for you?
Yes. That's interesting that you asked that, because I personally know you're aware of another study that we did, but I don't think you're aware of this. So this is a.
But I know I feel like I know you a little bit, so I figure there must have been something.
There was in those early years. For about 2 years, I read everything and met with people and called people and did everything I could to understand grading. And what triggered this was my son was, I think, a senior at University of Chicago. And, you could expect that after collecting cards since 1951, I was looking forward to the day where I would give that collection to my son. And I talked to him about it, and he said he was on his way to law school, University of Chicago, and he said, "Dad, I see how hard you work." It wasn't an accurate assessment, because he was looking at the last 2 years when I had retired and spent those 2 years organizing the cards. I worked every day on this. So
On your 430,000 cards.
And so based on that, that was his most recent observation. He said, sell the cards and do something with the money that you'd never do for yourself. I think in his heart, he knew that I was going to do something with the City of Hope. So I guess I was surprised, maybe a little disappointed. And then all of a sudden, I found myself kind of eagerly approaching the concept of selling cards. And then it occurred to me, I'd never sold a card. I did not know how to sell a card. Can you believe this? I had 430,000 cards. I didn't know how to sell a card. So I started reading about that and trying to understand that. And I probably found the same things that everybody else has found. Oh, if you have this era of card, give it to this company, you get better grades. If you have this kind of, if it's vintage, if it's modern, if it's football, if it's whatever. And then I read things about don't give cards here because, and I reached the point where I was so frustrated at not being able to find out how you sell a card. I couldn't even determine, do you sell a premium, ultra premium card by itself? Do you sell it as part of the entire set? I had many sets, all the sets of the 50s, 40s, some 30s. Do you put the whole set out to sell, or how do you do it? And I decided to do a little test to find out where I should get the cards graded. I had concluded that premium cards needed to be graded to get the full value. So I did a study, and I just took 100 cards, random, different sports, different eras. I sent them to a grading company. I got the cards back. I cracked them out of the slabs, and I remember looking at videos and talking to people because I didn't know how you take a card out of a slab. And I resent the cards to a second company. I got them graded. And when I got those cards back and compared them, I'm not in any way attempting to cast any aspersion on grading, but 74 of the cards had different grades. And sometimes very small difference, but I couldn't understand it. And it caused me to conclude that there was an opportunity to hopefully enhance the grading standards that were applied to cards and bring a little more consistency to grading. So I started out on that, and that's what led to my making a commitment to myself at first to get a grading company that used technology to grade. One of the things that I concluded, by the way, and this is only my opinion, so it's not carved in stone by any means, but when I looked at the results, it was interesting to me. If you added up all of the card scores for the 100 and divided by 100, the average score was almost the same. It was very, very minor difference. Yet the variance in the cards on any given card was so great, 74 of the cards being different, but it told me that there was an equal chance of the grade being higher or lower on any individual card. And if you graded enough cards, you were going to come out with the same average. The industry would reproduce its average. The problem was on any given card, the standard deviation off that average was so large and value was driven by such a small variance in grade. So that was the dynamic I looked at, and that's what I said is this needs to be fixed. I did not ever, I don't even think of it today. I did not think, oh, this is an opportunity to make money. Never. What I see it as is an opportunity to add something from my life and put something into something I have a total passion for.
The hobby.
What people will see when we start our business, we do so many things. We have free supplies and free submission kits, and we do it with the utmost care and packaging and safety. You'll see this next week. We built our slabs in ways that are, we think, second to none. There's no compromise in the quality, integrity. It's not profit driven. I could show you on other slabs where profit incentive may come into play in making that slab, because we've learned a lot about slabs. This is a passion. This is something that is done out of love for the sport. I can't say that for everybody. There are a lot of people in this company, rightfully so, that are here to build careers. They're here to make extensive commitments. They're here to honor those commitments, and they want to make money doing it. We have investors, and there's no investor that's in our company that's invested because Steve has a passion for cards. They're investing because they've seen what we do, they believe in what we do, and they want to make a profit. And I would say it's fair that most of our investors don't have a cap on that profit. The more they make, the happier they're going to be.
Sure.
So
let me jump in. A couple of questions. Speaking of the study that you just mentioned, and Lucky K has the same question that I had, which is, what was the first company you sent to, and what was the second company you sent to?
Yeah, I'd ask the same question as Lucky K and you. I'm not going to answer it. I never have. I don't believe that study was, I cannot say that I genuinely undertook that study to demonstrate that somebody was not grading cards as well as I thought they should. It had nothing to do with that, and I don't think the results indicate that. And my reason for the study was I wanted to determine whether or not there was a, if you will, human eye factor that was impacting on any particular card and what grade that card might get. And for that reason, it served its purpose. I've disclosed what its purpose was, but it doesn't really matter. I will just say that I've never given a card to anybody for purposes of building our business plan that was not a credible source of grading.
The second question I want to ask about the study, because you mentioned that you submitted 100 cards to one company, then you cracked them out and submitted them to another company. A lot of people might think that while cracking them out, you might have impacted the condition of the cards before sending them to the second company. My question is, on those results, the variance between the grade from company one and company two, how many were graded lower? How many were graded higher? Because if they're graded higher, I would assume that you didn't damage the card.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I did not do the kind of analytics that you're asking for in that study, but 5 years later or so, we undertook a much more sophisticated study. And in that one, we did do what you just asked. And the answer from that study with 1,200 tests, 1,200 grade results, 41% of the cards on the second grade had a higher grade.
Higher.
Yeah. That's an interesting study, which I won't do. I know I did it. So you ask it if you want and don't ask it if you don't want, however you want to pursue this. I mentioned to you before the show, just ask me whatever you want. I don't mean to be rude, but I said I don't need any kind of preparation or preview of what you're going to ask.
Well, unlike yourself, I prepare quite extensively for these shows, so I do have a list of questions that I've thought long and hard about, and I'm going to go to my next one. So during the last 10 years of developing the technology and the business plan, did you ever take a step back? And did you ever, I guess, do another study? And I know the answer to this, so I'm setting you up for that.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak a little bit about that and maybe when it occurred?
Yeah. I'd really like to. So I would differentiate it from the first study, as the first study being more of a confirmation of suspicions I had based on things that I had read. I was trying to confirm or deny various rumors, that you pick up when you're reading and talking to people. The second study was to find out what the facts are, and that's a completely different study. So, recognized it needed statistical validity. We used 200 cards. We took cards of varying eras, different sports. We different conditions. So we sent the 200 cards to company 1. We got the cards back. We sent them to company 2. We got them back. We sent them to company 3. And then we compared those results and did a lot of detailed analysis on whose grades were higher, on what type of cards. Was there any pattern there that people did a little better on football or did a little better on the 50s, or that kind of stuff. But then we took the cards and we took 50 of the cards out of the 200 and we trimmed those cards. I actually want to say something about trimming because I read something today. I don't know. Somebody sent it to me and I don't even know what it is. It's whether you call it a blog or a message board or something. And somebody said something about a guy that I work with, Scott Maxwell, and said that he was associated with a company. I don't even know the company name, but that in the article or in this write-up, it referenced trimming in the context of using Scott's name. So you'll meet Scott when we talk about the grading system on the 18th of June. But when somebody says that, yes, it has a lot of import to Scott, I'm sure, and his credibility. But even more important than that, it's a statement about my integrity and my credibility, and that's why I want to mention it. In my opinion, only an idiot would say something like that without knowing that what they're saying is correct. So I have personal experience with Scott and over 8 or 9 years. And so Scott's graded about 3 million cards. Scott used to work at one of the major grading companies. Scott has consulting relationships with a number of people in the industry. When we did this study that you're asking me about now, and I just started to tell you, we took 50 cards out of that 200 on the second go round, and we wanted to trim those cards and submit them to, because part of the study was to identify if you saw the card once and you got the same card back trimmed the second time, would you identify it as trimmed? And so I asked Scott if he would trim those cards, and he literally said, not knowing this topic would come up today, I don't know how to do it. He said, I guarantee you, if I trim those cards, anybody that's a grader will know those cards are trimmed. So I trimmed the cards. So the person who wrote that article, okay, put my name in there. I'm the one that's associated with TAG. I'm the founder of TAG. I trim those cards. I admit to trimming those cards. And that's the way you should be writing your message board. By the way, I have every one of those cards. We've retained all the 200 cards for the study. Those cards have never been sold, but I will acknowledge I'm a card trimmer. I get it. And I had no idea how to do it. I read about it. I looked at some video. I bought one of those table cutters. I bought X-Acto sets. I tried everything. So let me put that issue aside. So we submitted the 200 cards, 50 of them. We submitted the 150 cards back to the company's second time. And at that point, we were able to test for what we call reproducibility. Could you take a card, unaltered, grade it once, and when you get that card back again the second time, can you reproduce the grade you gave it the first time? And are you the best at it, the worst at it? Are you in the middle? Is there a difference in the companies? But reproducibility to me is very important. So we did that study, and we were able to very carefully examine the cards. We have those cards. We have all the flips from each one of those cards. We have 6 grades per card. We've retained everything. And again, just in case you're going to ask me, It doesn't matter the three companies that we use to grade the cards. It doesn't matter who was better. We know, and I don't even want to use the term better, who was more consistent. We know. We know what cards there's greater consistency on. It's unimportant. What is important is that when you're dealing with something like cards, there are so many, there are trillions and trillions of combinations of defects and variables that can impact on a card, even when you're only considering major defects. Every location can be different, every length difference, every width, every depth, where it is on the card. There's so many variables. And so when you're starting to deal with human beings aren't even the species on Earth that has anywhere near the best eyesight. There's so many animals that can see far better than a human being. So just the fact that we're humans, let's not pat ourselves too hard on the back about how great we do things with our eyes. And eyesight is remarkable and it's amazing, but it's not precise. You can ask almost any defense attorney when they have a witness giving testimony how accurate the eyewitnesses' testimonies are. So it shouldn't be expected that human beings can look at these kinds of details and these kinds of combinations of this many attributes and consistently come out with the same answer. It's not possible. So yes, we've done the second study. It's a remarkable study. I would say that it was the impetus that we needed to convince us that while we had the end in sight to let us know we're heading in the right direction.
So you said that you said you had 6 flips per card. So does that mean that you sent each card to 3 different grading companies twice?
Yes.
Okay.
We sent 200 cards to 3 different companies 2 times each.
Got it. Okay. So you thought that wasn't free. You put some investment into that, but I guess it helped you understand that there was a need for what you're doing. Let me ask you this.
It also took like 2 years or something.
Yeah.
So,
that's fast these days, actually.
Yeah, so it's a commitment. You want to know the truth. That's what we did. We said to ourselves, we need to do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, I want to ask about the study. You sent the same card back to the same company. Can you disclose sort of not what company was most consistent, but what was the rate of reproducibility overall? So this not between different companies, but to the same company.
I will say that the ability to reproduce your first grade a second time, the inability to do that was consistent among these 3 companies, and it was significant. The variance was very material.
Yeah.
But it was very similar. I guess you could say they were consistently inconsistent.
Okay. So let me ask you this then. What is your opinion today of the leading grading companies in the space?
Well, first, as companies, they're remarkable. I would say that PSA has been a leading an architect of the growth in the industry, and I think the card industry as we know it today is largely the result of PSA. I think custom set registry was brilliant. I think it's added a lot of value to cards. I think that Beckett, I remember when I was much younger, looking at Beckett magazines and seeing the right-hand side of the page with those 2 columns of condition. I don't remember what they were. I think excellent, mint, and gem mint, or whatever, but they had 2 valuations. And I think Black Label, I think, was a very good effort to. One of the things that I think everybody's realized is that the manufacturing of cards has gotten better and better. And so it's more and more difficult to differentiate between cards. If you look at the decades on population reports, PSAs, for example, and you look at the cards that were graded for the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, et cetera, you'll see that the percentage of cards graded that are 10s goes up. And you can expect that because the older vintage cards, maybe you would expect to have lower grades. But it's a consistent pattern until recently, because I think we've kind of maxed out. You can't give every card a 10. And so the challenge has now been, not looking for cards that are 10s, but looking for cards that you can characterize as less than 10. And I'm not being critical of that. I think it's essential, because if every card ends up with a 10, there's almost no reason to grade cards. So while manufacturing is getting better and card grades are becoming more high grades are becoming more routine, things like Black Label help the market differentiate between a 10 and a 10, help them differentiate between a high grade and a high grade. We use 1,000-point grading scale. Why? It amazes me that everybody doesn't. We use 1,000-point scale because if you're using, let's say, half-point scales, 1 to 10, and you've got an 8.5, and you round to the nearest half grade, and you've got a card that would grade an 826, you would give that card an 8.50. And if you had a card that graded a 924 or a 925, you would give that card a 9. And so you say, well, how can there be 48 points, basically a half a grade difference between those two cards, and they get a same grade? Or how can there be a different grade on cards that have the same characteristics, but they're off 1 or 2 points at whatever that differential is? So if an 828 and 85 are your grades, you would theoretically say an 824 is an 8 and an 826 is an 8.5. How can those 2 points differentiate a half a point grade when the value is so great in that difference? So the 1,000-point scale lets us look at, a 999, a 998, a 997, a 996. We help the market determine and differentiate value and tell them why. Total transparency. You will see every defect on our detailed image and grading report. You will see every defect. You will have high resolution images of it. You will have a locator. It'll tell you what type of defect, what size, where it's located, its weighting, its score. And you'll be able to check and see that every time that defect shows up on another card, anywhere, it's going to be treated the same way. We also have things like a proof card. It's a card without defects, and it's never touched by human hands. We have a near proof card. Near proof card is a card that's near a defect-free card, but it's been touched by human hands. A proof card's one of a kind. Once we find that proof card, and how do we find it? You can't submit the card because it's touched by human hands. We buy cases of cards. We open those cases in an environmentally controlled area. People are wearing gloves and hats and coats and reverse osmosis and whatever to keep the room totally clean. And when we find that card that doesn't have defects, or any defects are below the scoring threshold, it's classified a proof, and the system recognizes that proof as one of a kind. There will never, ever be another proof card of that card. So for people who like one of a kind cards, this is something important. But even more important, I think, is, can you imagine what this does for a common card? A card that has no value, certainly not worth grading, that we identify a common card that's a one-of-a-kind proof card. In my opinion, it will sell for more than the unslabbed common card, the raw common card. So we have a lot of innovative things like that. You're going to hear a lot about these things over the next 3 episodes, and I don't want to pull too much out. And there's a lot to unpack in TAG, a lot.
Yeah. And
so multiple reveals, because we have to go slowly and show everybody, and not tell everybody what we do. We have to show it. And we have a lot of transparency built in the system, but if we tell you there's transparency, we ought to be able to show you the transparency. What value is somebody telling you there's transparency and you can't see it?
Yeah, no, I agree. And, you talked about the 1,000-point scale, and I'm a big fan of that, because if you've watched my show before, you know that I've said over and over again that there are not only 18 or 19 grades that describe a card's condition. There's an infinite amount of grades that can describe a card's condition. So 1,000 is a lot closer to infinity than 10 or 19 with half grades is. So I like that specificity. But the hobby is very used to this 10-point scale. So how do you reconcile what the hobby is used to with your 1,000-point grading scale?
We give them the 1 through 10 grade they're accustomed to seeing. So I don't know if you'll see it here, but on this particular slab, it's glary, you won't see it, but I'll read it to you. So this one says that this happens to be a 10 pristine. The score on this card is a 978, but we give them the industry 10.
Good. Okay.
So we're not asking people to convert to our system. What we're asking people is take your 1 through 10 scale. We're going to give it to you, but let us give you a lot of details as to why that card is an 8 on that scale. Is it really an 8 or is it an 807? Is it an 807? Why is it an 807? So we're not changing anything. We're just giving more information and support for it. Our system is built to reflect the current grading industry standards.
Good. Okay. So let's keep going here. Do you think that TAG is better at grading than the other companies are?
I think better is an improper word. So I would say when you say something is better, you kind of say the other one's not as good. And I think when people switch from the dial phone to a push button phone, this is before your time, not mine.
No. I remember dialing.
I remember my great aunt had a crank phone. But when you introduce a new technology, if it's done for the right purpose, I think it's either to make something more efficient, give it greater utility, reduce the cost, make it more available, speed up the time that it takes. It's not to change what's done, it's to improve what's done. So when you say better, if you mean, do we improve the grading systems that exist today, the manual grading systems? My answer would be yes. We improve them with a little greater consistency and reproducibility. And when you offer more consistency, you are offering more accuracy. So that's the only context that I would say. I would say we're improving on what has been done, and I think what's been done is a fabulous job at building an industry. I just thought of this, but I think it merits saying, and I may be very wrong in this statement. My recollection is that when Nat Turner made an offer to buy CLCT, he wrote a letter to shareholders, and one of the reasons he was buying the company was, as I recall, he felt that they had underutilized their resource with respect to developing technology. I'm almost sure he said something about that, something akin to that type of statement. And I don't think he would say there's no place for the technology we're developing. In fact, I think that he would hopefully welcome the opportunity to speak to us about what we're doing. I think it's something that he and others should have an interest in. I would be extremely proud if my name were associated with PSA and its role in the industry and its future. We don't intend to. I'm not even sure we will ever accept a card in a PSA slab to grade. I don't see any reason to. I'm not saying we won't, but it's not in the plan. We're not trying to disrupt PSA's business. When you consider all the cards that are graded represent something like 0.082% or 0.088% of the cards that are manufactured. There's so many cards out there that are ungraded that if we can lower the cost, increase the turnaround time, make common cards more valuable, introduce the hobby to younger kids, put proof cards in the stands at all the sporting events, halftime giveaway, seventh inning stretch, whatever. If we can say to the consumer, look, your card's not that valuable. Don't incur the expense of grading, and don't incur the expense of handling and the time of handling and shipping, insuring, whatever. Don't send us your card to grade. We'll send you the technology. Listen to that carefully. Our plan is that we're not going into business to have a whole bunch of people send us cards. We're going into business to have a whole bunch of technology delivered to the market. And that's where our market is. We're not looking for the people that are doing business with PSA or Beckett or SGC. There's no reason. There's billions of cards out there. They're doing 15 million cards combined. There's billions of cards out there that aren't graded. Wait, I didn't even say. We've met with manufacturing companies. We've been told that, for example, there's more soccer cards made in a World Cup year in countries outside the United States than all the sports cards that are made in the United States those 4 years.
Wow.
So what do you have? A bunch of group submitters? Not even a bunch. A handful of group submitters that get enough cards together that they can send to a U.S. grading company? Or you have a grading company here that contemplates opening up a brick and mortar shop that with labor cost and rent, and we plan on having our technology in those markets and having the cloud be our labor force and our brick and mortar. So we're not even looking at the existing grading companies. They don't represent anything to us in our business plan.
Okay. No, fair enough. I think despite the business plan, some people will still want to, use tag over another company that they've been using just because, it's going to be more accurate, consistent, and reproducible. I think those should be important qualities of a grading company. Can you speak a little bit more about those? I've seen some comments in the chat about them, and I saw someone say that consistency is very important, reproducible is important. Is there anything else you've spoken to them, but is there anything else you'd like to say about those three attributes?
Yeah.
Accuracy, consistency, and reproducibility.
My mind kind of wandered, and in that question you started by making another comment as the intro to that, and
I just said that some people will shift their business from one company to another, and all the existing companies have their loyalists, and the hobby is very used to those companies. So I like that you're setting out not to take that business away, but to really grow the overall grading submissions across the world.
Yeah. To that point, if I might offer a comment, and it's just my personal opinion. As a general rule, the person who's making a decision on where to get a card graded today is the owner of the card or the influencer, and how, where, and when that card gets sold. And what we want to do is we want to present our technology to the market on the buy side. I want the person who's buying a card for $10,000, $3,000, $20,000 to say, I'll buy the card. I agree to the price, but I want that card tagged. I want to see the detailed grading report. I want to see exactly what the defects are. And so we're not looking for the quote submitter of the cards to decide that we're a good place to get a card graded. We want his buyer to say, I'll buy the card. I'll pay the price. I'll even pay you more money, but I want the card tagged. So I did want to add that thought that I'm not so sure it's the sellers who determine where cards are graded as much as the buy side. Yeah,
that sounds fair to me. Definitely. Okay. And then it was asking you to just speak a bit more towards accuracy, consistency, and reproducibility. If there's anything else you'd like to say about them and how they've worked into the mission of TAG.
I think we've kind of covered it. I could speak on the subject of each of those for hours and bore the audience to death. But
well, let's keep going.
Okay.
Unless you have anything else to say, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that they're extremely important. I think that there's almost only two components to the value of a card. One of them is the scarcity of the card, and the other one is the condition of the card. And sometimes they can operate independently. You could have even a trimmed Honus Wagner that sells for more money than it did before people knew it was trimmed. I guess you could say also that provenance can play a part in the value of a card, but I think more so than anything, scarcity and condition. So the scarcity is impacted by counterfeits. You think that there's only X number of those cards and find out that somebody has run off 10, 20 versions of the card, and all of a sudden it's not scarce. The condition of the card is problematic, or can be problematic, not if the person who buys the card from you cares as little about the condition of the card as you do when you get it graded. So if you're the typical person who grades a card, you don't care what the grade of the card is, as long as it meets your expectations as far as how high the grade you want. So if you expect that a card you submit is going to be a 9 and you get back a 10, I doubt you are ever going to complain about the grading company. If you submit a card that you expect a 9 and you get back an 8, what do? Well, you crack the slab, you resubmit it 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I've had people tell me they've done as many as 9. That's because you're dissatisfied with the grade. It didn't meet your expectations. So I think that consistency in grading is very important. Everybody needs to know the grade is the grade, but you can't do that unless you can tell people and show people why. So I don't think somebody cares if there's a defect that impacts a card by 80 points. I don't think they say this should be 65 points. This should be 88 points. I think where they feel cheated and where they complain is when they get it with an 80-point defect and somebody else with the apparently same defect ends up getting 40 points of deduction, and they get a 9.5 and you get a 9. That's very common, by the way, in my reading, particularly with centering, which people are able to look at and make good calculations. And I've seen a lot of articles written about how can this get ABC score on centering when it's blank blank, and this card is worse and gets a better grade. That to me is frustrating to the industry, and I don't think there's any reason for it. I think consistency will resolve that. We want to provide consistency to the industry. I don't know whether we hook up with a large retailer and put our grading pods in retail locations. I don't know whether or not we ask eBay if they would be interested in providing some consistent grading to their platform. I don't know whether or not we've been approached by a shopping center magnate. I think he owned 110 or 120 shopping centers, who said, I'll put one of these pods in every one of my shopping centers. We've had calls from Europe, from the UK, Spain, Germany, Italy, India, Pakistan, Japan, China.
How have they found you? Because you've been pretty under the radar.
They didn't. They called us because of our patents. And they wanted to know, have you vacated the patents? Where are you at in the development? When will you be doing this? Can we get an exclusive? Let me throw in Canada and Mexico into that group. So I know there's opportunity there. I'm not sure whether we are the flag bearers of bringing that opportunity forward, or whether we will associate with the prominent people who will help us bring it forward. I just know what we have is something that should be valued by the industry, and over time it will be.
Well, again, as I said at the beginning, I've been to the facility. I've seen the technology. I've seen the pods. I was blown away. And it's been difficult for me not to talk about this over the last couple of months, as I've been, as we decided to do this series and reveal it here today and over the next 4 episodes. But I was very, very impressed.
We've had very few people here, as you know, very few. You could count them on one hand. And every person that's been here the feedback has been similar to yours. And we're proud of that. This is the first time on the 25th, we're actually going to be, I think, moving some kind of camera, or I don't know how the guys will do it. We have very capable guys, but we're going to be, people are going to see the operation. And I'll tell them in advance, they will be very surprised. We don't need a 140,000 square foot building. We don't need a lot of people running around. As a matter of fact, we don't hire a single grader. That's a pretty interesting statement. We're a grading company. We do not hire anybody that is an experienced grader. Don't want them. Everybody we have are people who are able to operate machines, are people who are able to understand a process, people who are able to be part of a team, a culture. They work together. So you'll see that, and you'll look around, and I think you'll say, that's kind of interesting how they're doing this.
Yeah,
come back and see these shows. I think people will like it.
So on one of the upcoming episodes, we're gonna actually, I don't know how we're gonna do it, but we're gonna see the operation itself, the grading pod and the technology and all that.
That is our intent, and I know that on Friday we started mapping out those things that need to be protected from view. In other words, let's just say, this is hypothetical, the name of a piece of equipment. Maybe we have to cover that. We're just now going through and starting to identify, because we have other patent filings that we're doing, and we have to be careful that we don't put into the public domain the things that we're filing patents for, because we lose the ability to patent the things if they're already in the public domain.
Right.
It's a balancing act, but people will see more than enough to understand the genuineness and accuracy of what we're doing.
Okay, great. I look forward to those episodes myself. Even though I've been there, I look forward to everybody else seeing what I got to see, and I think you'll be impressed. I know some people won't. We're gonna have skeptics no matter what. That's just a fact of life, and that's okay. It's good to have some skeptics. Keeps you on your toes. But I think the majority of the hobby is going to be very, very impressed. Anything on that?
Yeah, I think that I've probably something happened here. I have probably learned more from, I don't know that I would say skeptics. I have learned more from people who start from a point of view that I've not seen this before, and I have doubts about whether or not this will work. And you learn a lot from those questions, and you learn a lot from people who have various backgrounds. And it's important to distinguish between people who say a lot because they're really not talking about the subject they're expressing. They're trying to talk about themselves. So you see people who talk about technology with all these fabulous technical terms, and they characterize it as questioning something that they're looking at, realizing they don't know anything about what they're looking at. How could they? But what they're really trying to do is say something about themselves, how much they know, how smart they are, how technically gifted, whatever. So I like people to comment and to be truthful. The people who I recognize their comment as being like an insect flying around me, typically on a summer night when it gets dark, I really don't respond. I wait until they run into the tree.
Yeah. Yeah.
But genuine dialogue is welcomed. People with a vested interest in the status quo, they never would have ever gotten on a jet plane. They never would have got on a prop plane. They never would have had an Apple Watch. They never would have used a cell phone. They never would have driven in a car. Those are the people who want the status quo. You look around, there's probably 90% of what you can see when you walk out of your house 20, 30, 40 years ago wouldn't have existed. So there are studies that, I forgot there's a rule as to the rate at which technology grows, and someone can look it up, but it's astounding. Yeah. It's something like every decade, technology grows at a rate double all of the technology that's been developed up to that point. I don't know the rule, and I don't know if I have the right rate, but technology is amazing.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, totally changing the topic now. I want to know, you mentioned you have investors. Are you willing to or able to let us know who any of these are? Any people who we may be familiar with at all?
There's definitely people you'd be familiar with. First, let me say that on our website, you can see our board and all of our board members. Let me just make sure that's correct. All of our board members are investors, so that would be one place to start, and their backgrounds are indicated there. We have a Cy Young contending major league pitcher investor. So people, would you know their name? Yeah, if I told you the name, people would obviously recognize it. We have people from the technical world. We have people from entertainment. People who are executives at large entertainment companies, so you may not know their name necessarily from in front of the camera, but if you look at our board, you'll see, for example, one person, and look at the shows that he's produced, and you'll recognize, from Seinfeld to other significant shows. So I'm always hesitant to talk about people because it's easy to do. And I wished I could tell you that we had the kind of investor profile that companies that are up and running, that are large companies that have. We don't, but we're starting. We've never gone out. We're not people who have sought outside capital, with one exception. Everything we've done is family and friends. And again, without disclosing names, we did have discussions with a group that impressed me greatly. And they're prominent people in the entertainment sports industries, and very, very smart guys. And the deal didn't work out. It's unfortunate from my perspective. I felt that the dilution that was created for my partners wasn't fair. I couldn't pull the trigger on that, but I love the guys. I thought, boy, could they bring a lot to this company.
Okay, no, fair enough. We can leave that there. I just thought it's just a question I was interested in.
Let me say one other thing to answer that question. We are in our plan. We are contemplating going out and doing a significant capital raise, probably around October. We have all the funds we need to do what we're doing, but there's so many things we want to do and do faster. So we will go out and raise a pretty good chunk of money.
Okay, good. Okay, so here are the questions that I think everybody is really curious about. There's three of them. What is the cost of grading with tag? What are the turnaround times? And when can people start sending you their cards?
Boy, all three of those are tough questions. They sound simple. They're not.
I'm glad they're tough then.
So let's take them one at a time. What do we charge? I don't know. We have numbers in our plans, and what you charge to grade a card has to reflect a number of things. And of course, it has to be reflective of your cost. And let's assume for a moment, you haven't seen what we do, but let's assume our cost per card is lower than grading where there's a high labor content. But you also have to consider your capacity. And as you use capacity, what does your incremental capacity cost? You also have to build into your cost what your application of your cash flow is, your operating cash flow. How much operating cash flow do you need to do what you intend to do tomorrow, next week, next month? So we're putting that together right now, and given what I just told you, I think it's fair. People should expect that our cost will be as lower than any cost in the industry. So I don't want to give you a number, because then if I'm off $1 or $2, you're going to come back or be disappointed or maybe be ecstatic. But I'd rather be candid and straightforward with you and tell you the factors that we're considering. But the end result will be as lower than any grading.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. Can I ask, when do you think you'll know that number? When will it be posted to the website?
Yeah, another tough question.
You can give me a range. You don't have to hone in on a specific day.
I'm going to say in July we'll be taking third-party cards, but let me explain why it's difficult to answer the question. If that was the only part of the question that I needed to answer, I could answer it. But there's another factor involved. Over the last, I don't know, 8 months or so, probably since the July convention, starting from the July convention, we have received 55, 60,000 cards here for grading. We told everybody, we're not grading yet. We'll tell you when we're grading. We have other people who've already told us how many cards they have to submit. We're supposed to let them know when. But we have here physically received 55, 60,000 cards. Worse than that, 30,000 of those cards came with payment, where they just estimated an amount, wrote out a check and said, here, cash it. And if the cost is higher, let me know. I'll make up the difference. If it's less and you owe me money, send it back. But I want to pay now because I want my cards to go into the front of the line. So we're just starting. You haven't heard the noise because I think they stopped thinking that it bothered me. But we're just starting that process right now. And I can't tell anybody that I know exactly how long it takes for us to do those cards. This is the first time we're putting cards through an entire process in volume. I can tell you that we're familiar with our capacity, we're familiar with our time, but we haven't even switched to the cloud yet. That's going on right now, which has a significant improvement on the rate at which our technology delivers results. So that's why I can't answer when we'll start. We're believing that we will start in July, right now. And by the way, when we start in July, just so nobody's disappointed, we don't want to ever disappoint anybody that gives us a card. And so that means that we will take as few a number of cards as we need to make sure that we are confident when we tell somebody they're going to get the card back on this day or this time, we do it. And I don't care if that means that we take 1 card a month, 100 cards a month, 10,000 cards a month, 50,000 cards a month, whatever it is that we say we do, we're going to make sure we do. So that's the other reason why I can't answer the time yet. Your last part of that question was it the turnaround time?
Yeah.
Good, because otherwise I'd have been helping you. The turnaround time is similarly complex because of that backlog of cards that we have. And I hate to call it a backlog because it's nothing for our system. It's a backlog because they're all sitting here and we're just starting that process. But while we're not interested in building a business model around large submitters, we do have what we call elite plus submitter status. And we have a number of people in that category. And those people agree to grade a certain volume of cards monthly. So for illustrative purposes only. A guy gets an elite status with us. He agrees he's going to give us 20,000 cards a month. And we agree that he's going to get a different pricing. And we would normally say, you know, we're going to turn your cards around in a month. For the Elite Plus, we say, every Friday, you ship us 5,000 cards. We'll receive them on Monday, and we'll send you the slab cards back on Friday. To us, we would designate a grading pod for that particular piece of business. And it doesn't matter to us whether we get them all and take a month and have a whole bunch of slab cards sitting there waiting for shipment, or we do them weekly and get the cards back. But it does matter to that submitter. They consider it a big advantage to be able to have that kind of service level. So that's not available to the public, but it does show what the intended capabilities are with respect to turnaround time. But if you recall a while ago, I said, don't send us your cards, we'll send you the technology. Well, when we put grading pods in the marketplace, and we know from our submission form the zip codes cards come from. So when we get to a certain number of cards from a certain zip code, let's just say, again, hypothetically, we put a grading pod there. And there are ways that we put a grading pod there where all the grading is done here. They're receiving the card, image capturing the card, printing the slab, slabbing the card. We're doing all the grading, and we have the ability to verify that the card that goes in the slab is the card that we graded, et cetera. So that is virtually immediate turnaround time. Somebody can come in and say, you know, I want the card in 15 minutes, and that's X fee, Y fee, Z fee. So we're talking a little bit about the future. Come back on the 25th, because the topic on the 25th, I think it's the 25th, is the future. Mm-hmm. We'll talk more about this. But these are all the things that we have to factor into what we're doing right now.
Sounds good.
We're going to meet the expectations of the industry, not because that's our challenge. It's because we think the expectations are remarkably low. So we're confident in saying we'll meet the expectations. Our actual planning is to dramatically exceed those expectations, teach people that they are entitled to the transparency, the accuracy, consistency, the reproducibility, immediate grading, immediate access to their, we want that to be what you're entitled to when you get a card graded. We have a ways to go, but the first challenge is in identifying what your objectives are.
Yeah.
Instead of just taking wild shots.
So we're going to do, we're coming to the end of episode 1 of again, this 5-episode series. What are some of your objectives of doing this reveal over 5 episodes with myself and the Sports Cards Live community?
Yeah. So my first answer would be that people see me as being a genuine person. That's the most important thing to me, and that I have integrity, and that our business will have a culture that reflects that. Number one, without a doubt. Number two, that there's a place for technology in almost any arena in the world. If it's you're watching TV, you're listening to music, whatever it is that you do, I can't even begin to tell anybody how much technology is in their car and the monitoring systems in their car. We're not trying to reinvent grading. We're not trying to change grading. We're using the same grading standards. That's in and of itself a pretty interesting statement, because I noticed somebody who asked some question about who are the people that used to whatever it was, establish the original parameters. We'll get into that when we talk about grading, but I would like to say it doesn't even matter. We're grading cards to the standards of the industry that exist today, and we're going to do it consistently. So people are thinking that we're reinventing the standard, and therefore they need to know, well, how did you get to reinventing the standard? We're not. The second thing that's important to me is that people understand that we've spent 10 years on this, not because we wanted to. We've had something like over 50 engineer developer type people working on it. We've had 4 different development companies. We've got 120,000 plus hours in development. We've got over 200,000 hours including the research and business plan. It's not because we're idiots. We have some highly skilled people here, and your audience will meet each of them. The reason why it takes 10 years is because that's how long it takes to do this right. And I want people to understand that that's what we're doing every step of the way. I guess the third thing that I would like for people to say is that I'm hoping that tag becomes a standard of excellence, that people ask for their cards to be tagged. The buyers ask for the card to be tagged, that our supply kits are recognized as well-designed, well-built. There's so much engineering that goes into just the box and the slabs. And I mean, your audience will hear all this, but I want them to appreciate that we took no shortcuts, none. And that's it. And then I guess I'm hoping I come across as being a likable person. Pick up the phone, call me, ask me any questions, chat with me. If I can't answer your question, and rather than give you a line of BS, I'll just tell you straight up that I can't answer. Either I don't know or it's not something we want to disclose, but I will be truthful.
Yeah. Well, I think those are great objectives for the series. I like Justin Vick just writes, tag it, baby. So you've said that people, one of your objectives is that people want to have the card tagged. Is that the vernacular that you're using at tag in terms of,
Yeah,
as a replacement for grade? Like, is that just a fun way to describe it, or what's the story there?
Well, right now it's fun, and we think it will become terminology that is in the forefront of the industry.
Lucky K says, good tagline. Yeah. Okay. So we are going to wrap this up soon, everybody. I've been monitoring all the comments that have been come in, and I've noted a few of them. So Steve, how are you doing for time? Do you have a few more minutes to go through and address a few comments that have come from the chat?
I want to try. Don't give me any hard ones.
Okay. Well, we're going to give you maybe a couple. Okay. So let me just go to those. And Lucky K said, without mentioning company names, how many of the trimmed cards actually got a grade?
Oh, thank you, Lucky. Thank you, Lucky K. Thank you. Of the 150 opportunities to identify the trim card, 12 of the 150 were correctly identified. And of those, all the cards that were submitted, no, of those 150 cards that were submitted trimmed, no, of the 450 cards that were trimmed, 8%, so it was 12%. The difference between the cards that were identified as trimmed that weren't trimmed and the cards that were properly identified as trimmed was very small. You had almost an equal chance of having a non-trim card identified as trimmed as a trim card correctly identified as trimmed. I have the numbers. I don't want to, off the top of my head, I wouldn't do it correctly. But
fair. Yeah, it's a pretty specific question, but I appreciate that you don't have that data at the top of your mind
Lucky,
right now.
Lucky K, am I answering? All of the cards received a grade if you count trimmed. Of the 12 that came back identified as trimmed, I consider that the grade that it got.
The grade being trimmed. Yeah, that's not what he means, but I hear what you're saying. Okay. Skeppy then said, I really hope that the objective data transferred into subjective technology. And unfortunately, I forget. I liked the question when I read it, but I forget what it was related to. Do you know, Steve? Is that something you can speak to? I think he's talking about the objective data from the studies, maybe. Let's keep going. Skeppy, feel free to clarify for me again, if you don't mind. Brian Basketballs, I'm just throwing this one up. I like this. This is one of the reasons I watch your channel. Jeremy, love the guests and all the new changes in the hobby we all love. And I like that last part. All the new changes in the hobby we all love. Frank Schneider, very impressed. I'm hooked for the series. Benjamin Diamond says, grading needs to be consistent, measurable, and transparent. Also, if you pay more for a high-end card to be graded, more time should be spent grading it. Now, I think that definitely applies for human grading. Does that apply for automated grading as well?
Thank you, Benjamin. No, we will charge the same thing for any card because they all take the same amount of time. It doesn't matter what the value of the card is. The reason why other companies, I believe, charge more for a high-end value card, aside from possibly the profit incentive, which I don't know, but it clearly should take more when you're manually grading a card. It should take more time, more care. It should take more graders looking at it. It should take a higher level of review. I will tell you that when Collectors Universe was public, I tracked their SEC filings, and at a time in their before they stopped reporting, they gave you the number of cards that were graded in the year. They told you you could compute the number of graders. A lot of data is in those filings if you know how to look at them. And it was taking them on the average 57 seconds a card, and by my calculation. And when you consider that the higher end cards are taking a lot more time, if they're not reviewed by two graders, which I think they maybe are, if they don't go to a supervisor or a higher level, if there's not a reconciliation when there's difference of opinion. So those cards, I don't know how much time they take, and I don't know what percentage they take, what percentage of the cards take that added level. But it's not difficult for me to think, gee, a regular card is picked up and graded in 15, 20 seconds. And maybe that's all it takes. But it should take more than that if you're going to do every one of those cards the same way. Any one of those cards you might be able to do like that. But to do all the cards like that and tell me that card number 12,130 is the same as you did on card number 1, I find it difficult to accept.
I think you're right about that. Okay, Kevin Jane says, I love the idea of having an explanation of the grade. It will make it easier to choose what cards are best fit for submission as we learn what defects cause lower grades. Any comments on that? I thought that was a fair comment. Any comments from you on that, Steve?
Yeah. First, I want to say that, Kevin, I love the question, and you are going to love the detailed answer that you get and the information and images that are provided. But just for now, transparency, I think it's Missouri that don't they have the that little motto that says the show me state? Isn't it Missouri?
I don't know. Let's go with it.
I'm not sure, but if I'm willing to stand up and tell you that this result is accurate and it's consistent with how I graded other cards, then I ought to be able to tell you why I'm able to say that. What data do I have that will demonstrate to you what I just said is accurate, other than my telling you the vernacular general eye appeal? I don't know what that means, general eye appeal. To whose eyes? I can show, it's like, what's that game where you put 10 people in a row and one person whispers something to the next, to the next, to the next.
Broken telephone.
Yeah, and so the message you get back at the end is different. I don't see how you can have hundreds of different people grading hundreds of thousands of millions of different cards on different days of the week, different times, when they're tired, when they're not. They wear glasses, they don't. Their hair is in their eyes, it's not. They were drinking the night before, they're not. There's so many variables. We're human beings. That's the nature of being a human being. We're different. And so I just don't believe that it's appropriate for anyone to say this is done consistently unless I can give you all of the data that you can then look at the next, and measure that consistency. So transparency, Kevin, you hit the nail right on the head. If you're going to do things consistently and transparently, then you better be able to show it.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Skeppy made the comment earlier that got pretty much torn down, that I'm not sure there's even a billion sports cards in existence. I think ProSet printed a billion cards themselves in 1989. Let's keep going. Wiz Collectibles. Did I understand correctly that Steve is open to the idea of the tag technology being partnered with one of the current big three grading companies?
I would say it slightly differently, more inclusively. I'm interested in doing something good for the hobby, and I'm interested in partnering with anybody who has a similar opinion, a similar desire. I want to see accuracy, consistency, reproducibility built around transparency become the standard for card grading. I would think that existing grading companies have a leg up on others, but I also think that it's somewhat problematic, or could be. They have a lot of cards in slabs. I have ways that I believe to deal with that, including just never regrade a card that's in a slab. But there are also ways to approach the grading. I'm not looking for a partner. What I'm looking for are people, companies, business investors, people who want to bring what we're bringing to the marketplace, and they want to further. We're not changing our commitment, but we'll partner with anybody whose commitment is consistent with that.
Good. Okay, good. Let's keep going. David French says, don't fall asleep, Jeremy. Yeah, I am on the tail end of what I believe is a 24-hour flu, actually. I've had the rough last 24 hours, everybody. So if I look a little off, that is why. But I'm doing my best here. I'm doing my best. Sanderson to Orr, Eric says, how many total employees does TAG have, and are there plans to hire more once the doors open?
Yes to the latter part of that question. I'm not sure of the number that we have. I think we have 19 or so now. And we're projecting that we'll probably have something around 60 by the end of the year. I don't want to translate that into volumes, but that's a large volume of cards for us.
Okay, keeping on going here. Skeppy clarifies, says, yeah, from the studies, because the data, I assume, influenced the technology. I say I hope for subjective tech, because I appeal as an example is not objective.
I agree. We did not use the studies to build the technology. We used the studies to confirm for ourselves that what we were trying to do was an improvement of the existing grading. In the course of that, of course, the analytics helped us understand better which companies did a better job at which type of cards, which era of cards, which companies had the largest standard deviation, the largest variance. We had one card that hypothetically, it got a 5 on the first grade and a 9 on the second grade. Well, whoops. It can't be that we damaged the card when we took it out of the slab. How do you damage it and go from a 5 to a 9? So there are a lot of examples like that, and each individual example is not the important thing. It's the overall study, and it enabled us to kind of reinvigorate ourselves, to re-energize ourselves, to say, you know what? In spite of the naysayers, in spite of all the people that say it can't be done, in spite of all the people that don't want it to happen because they have vested interests, this is going to work. It's going to work because it's the right thing. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I've got some guy sitting in a room with a backwards baseball cap telling me my cards just lost 50% of its value because they decided what the grade was. It doesn't make common sense. I don't even know the guy who did it.
Fair, yeah. Okay.
By the way, we're going to be tracking every card through our location from the time it gets here. It's open the package, tracks through the entire system. So we'll know every single person that was involved in the grading of that card. We'll have video of the entire process. If somebody says my card was damaged after you got it, we'll have proof of what that card was. We have images of the card when it's a raw card. We have images of the card when it's a graded card. We have the video of the entire process. We're trying to protect the marketplace. We're trying to say to the market, you can depend on us. Let us be the person that you bet your money on.
Okay. No, I think that's good. I think that's good and fair. I'm going to throw here's a difficult, well, I say it's difficult only because the tone of the question is one of extreme know-it-all sort of thing. David French says, there is not a way to judge corners, surface, or edges objectively. If you can't admit that, then I'm not sure I can ever trust you. How do you respond to that comment?
Well, my first response is that, David, if you would like, I will have our guys put into the order management system that the system will make sure that even by mistake, it doesn't accept the card from you. So I respect your opinion to not rely on us. I also respect your opinion and your highlighted NOT, not a way to judge corner, surface, or edges objectively. And it would be a conversation because I have no idea what your idea is of judging corners, what you're judging when you look at a corner, what's objectivity, what's the value of relativity, what's the value of establishing a standard. I have no idea. You're making a statement because you know nothing about what we do. So I respect your opinion, and I suggest you not submit cards.
Fair. Wiz Collectibles, appreciated the response you gave in terms of partnering, and that is a phenomenal approach to better the hobby. Jeff Hart says, will the grading system become smarter as more cards are graded, or is technology already maximized? And I want to just say, we can save this for that episode if you want, unless you want to give a quick answer to it right now.
Yeah, no, I'd like to say that we're going to have the chief technology officer of our production model developer. So let's remember that we used a proof of concept developer. We went from there to a prototype developer and had everything that the proof of concept developer did reviewed and enhanced and modernized. We then went to a minimum viability developer. We had everything done prior to that, reviewed and modernized. We then went to a production and had everything reviewed and modernized and brought forward. So when we say that, is the technology already maximized? My answer would be, the one thing I've learned about technology is it's never completed. And our variance right now, we believe, and we state publicly that our variance is designed to be 4 points out of 1,000 variance. And when we're grading cards right now, we probably accept 8 points out of 1,000 variance. By the way, you have to compute that to a 1/10 scale to understand what I'm talking about as a variance. So we think we'll be at 4 in July when we do this, but so the answer would be, it's not maximized. We want to get to 2. We want to get to 1. But at 1,000 points, it's just very difficult to get much better. We're looking at very high resolution things that literally moving the card from here to there, the atmosphere on that card, the airborne artifacts on that card. So how do we try and keep things standard? Well, I'm not going to go into the details, but we treat every card. We have certain treatment of every card that is identical. So we have the means of dealing with airborne artifacts. We have the means of dealing with curvature in the card, but not just dealing with it on that card, dealing with it on that card so that every other card is dealt with the exact same way. Took a lot of time to think of these things. Jeffrey, thank you for that question.
Okay, good. Let's go to Justin Vick. He says, I hate that I came in late for this one. Like what I'm seeing on the site and hearing from Mr. Kass. On to episode 2. Very nice. Thank you, Justin. Richard Zangrillo, who is not easy to impress, says, I like this guy. Absolute badass, takes no guff. So that's a feather in your cap when you can impress Richard Zangrillo.
So Richard, you took David's spot in the order management system. And just because you said that, Richard, go on our email, get my email address, send me your email address. I want to grade 50 cards for you free.
Whoa, there you go, Richard. Congratulations. Well, and I can help get in touch with Richard. Steve Foley says, this is exciting and the hobby needs it. Great job, Steve, and welcome to the hobby. I'll just say it's not really a welcome to the hobby. It's welcome to being a public person in the hobby and launching the company. Just because if you weren't here at the beginning, Steve Kass has been in the hobby since 1951. And Richard goes on to say, I respect that Steve isn't willing to pander. He has a clear vision and he's not willing to compromise to appease the hobby naysayers. Sounds good to me. To me.
Trying to get another 50.
Huzzah, he says. There you go. Okay, we're done with the comments, Steve. Before we go, two more things I want to address as quick as we can. Number one, give a teaser for what everyone can expect on episode 2, which is going to be a week from today, next Tuesday.
Episode number 2 would be my favorite episode, except I like episode number 3 better. And unfortunately, I think episode 4 is the topper. So the reveal is designed to gain momentum, to add more texture, more details, more understanding, to unwrap this tag system in a way that people can see and appreciate what it is. Next week is important because if you want to submit cards, how do you submit cards? And do we do anything different than the way you traditionally submit cards? Is it easier? Is it harder? What do you, as a card submitter, what do you do to me to make my life better? If I want to do business with you, how do I do it without incurring the pain of doing business with you? So you'll find us talking about that. You're going to understand about our supplies, why we use the supplies we do, how the supplies are distributed, why they're distributed the way they are. You'll understand what you need to do to respond to the receipt of those supplies, how we assist you in identifying your submission, how we track that submission. So you will see some of what we call the differentiators, the things that we do differently than the industry. And I think that the people in the audience will appreciate it and like it. Let me continue because you'll probably ask me about episode 3 and what.
Well, you can continue, but I would ask you about episode 3 at the end of episode 2. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, ask episode 2 guys to tell you about 3 because they may see it differently. So to me, episode 3 kind of screams transparency. And I can't even imagine how many times I used the word transparency just tonight. And you're going to hear a lot more about transparency next week. But we're finally going to show you what does it mean when we say something's transparent. And you're going to see something, your viewers are going to see something I can guarantee you they have never ever seen before, and I would venture to guess they have never even imagined before. It will be startling. And 4 will show you how 3 comes about. Okay. That's it. And then, of course, we'll talk about the future. And while I want everyone to be excited about what TAG is doing now, and I tell all the guys here, matter of fact, you'll hear them all say this, I'm sure, in each episode. We only have one thing to do: execute. That's it. All the bullshit, the talk, the this, that means nothing. Everything means one thing: execute. Yeah. And so when we're done talking to you about the things that we can do, that we are executing, I want to talk about the future because I'm hopeful that by that time we've earned enough respect from your audience and enough confidence from your audience that they won't see our vision of the future as bluffery, as hyperbole, they'll say. these guys, they can do it. So
I mean,
that's the future.
yeah, I have no doubt based on what I saw, again, from being at TAG back in March. Lucky K, great interview. Thanks for all the info. I'm looking forward to grading with you. That's great, Lucky K. And last comment, I'm not even gonna look at, I can't stop at looking at them, but here's a comment from Jordan Rivers. He says, will you have the same grading? Will you have the same scale of grading on the bigger companies? Or will Probstein 123 keep getting 10s on his cards? It should be 8s. What he's insinuating here is that some people get favorable grades from certain grading companies. That's what he's insinuating. How do you guarantee that there will be no favoritism given to any particular submitter?
Well, from my perspective, the ultimate guarantee is my word that that's never going to happen. But for those who don't know me, the better guarantee is that our system won't allow it. There is no person in this facility that can access that system and alter that technology-driven grade. It is a 100% automated system. So we get a card, and to you, to everybody, a card is a card. To us, a card is a widget. It comes in. We don't differentiate, can't differentiate. There's no need to differentiate. It is what it is. We limit the cards that we're grading, the type of cards. We're doing 2000 to present. You'll hear all about this in the future episodes. Rather than take some things that we don't do as precisely and say, it doesn't matter, they'll never know. We just tell you right up front, we're not ready to grade that yet.
Yeah, that's good way to do it. Just
but Jordan, I don't know that any other company has favoritism or influence. I have no idea. I prefer to think they don't. But I will tell you, it is impossible for that to happen here. The system is designed. It cannot happen.
Okay. Last question. Punt, pass, click. Do people want transparency or the highest resale? I've never seen a collector, flipper, or investor send back a 10 because it's really a 9.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's two thoughts in that comment. The first thought is that a 10 is better than a 9, and people would rather have a 10 than a 9, no doubt. The other thought is, does transparency add to the resale value of the card? So I would suggest if I was going to spend $30 on a card, I might be less likely to care about why it's a 9. If I were to spend $30,000 on a card, you can bet your ass I would want to know all of the details and all the transparency on why that card is graded the way it is. And it enables people to build their collection within a industry standard grade. They could say, okay, this is the standard. I have a custom set I'm putting together. It's all 9s and 10s. Our system allows somebody to put the set together and better define what that range is between 9s and 10s. When you're selling a card and you're selling a card that's an X grade on a 1 through 10 scale, I'm going to suggest you'd get more money if it had the same 9 or 10 for the industry standard, but that when the card is tagged with the tag grade and you see that you're at the higher end of that scale, I'd be willing to bet you that card will sell for more money than the card that's at the lower end of that scale. We've seen it already. Some people will say, boy, 52 Topps Mantle is a good example, but there are others where people say, I just want the card and I'm buying the card. And other people will say, I know that card's graded X, but I want to pay less than the last card that sold at that value because that card's clearly off center. So investors have their own appetite for the cards, but information, I've never seen anybody say, I don't want to know more about what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest complaints in the industry now is that people don't know why they get the grades that they get. So I think it's very important. And really the comment that Punt, Pass, Click makes, it insinuates that we're better off being kind of just stupid and dumb about the cards that we're getting. And it's better that we don't know what we actually have, because as long as we get the 10, then we're going to get more money for it, which means we're taking advantage of our customers, of the people buying the cards from us.
Yeah, but I think for Punt, Pass, Click, that's short-sighted, because eventually so many of the cards are going to be graded 10, the value of a 10 itself is going to be lost. But in our case, if it's a high 10 and we can distinguish why it's a high 10, you've reinvigorated that 10 market. If 1 through 10 is a value and you differentiate it by 1, 2, 3, 4 through 10, then there's no reason why 9 through 10 wouldn't be a value if you differentiated it by 9, 9, 10, 9, 20, 9, 30, 9, 40. And there's no reason that 9 to 9, 10 wouldn't be a value if differentiator if you could differentiate 901, 902, 903. So we're not doing anything outside the industry standard. We're allowing the consumer the opportunity to know where they lie. Wait till you see our population report. I'm not going to tell you what's on it, but it lends itself to this discussion greatly. And let me say one other thing. If anyone wants to be blind, deaf, and dumb about what's in their card, they don't have to scan the QR code and get the detailed image and grading report and see all the detail. It's not like mandatory. Anybody can still buy the card. The information's only there for those who want it. But what Punt, Pass, and Click just said to me is that, wow, the buyers may want this information that the sellers prefer they not have.
Exactly. Yeah.
So to those who want to take advantage of the buy side, great.
Yeah.
To the buyers, for every card that's sold, keep in mind there's a buyer.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to wrap up. Tony's cards, I see your question. That's going to come up in episode 5 when we discuss the future. So let's wrap this up, Steve. Any final comments to the audience before we end this episode?
I would like
2 hours in.
Just like to thank everybody for joining us. Come to our website. It's tagrating.com. Check us out. We will be adding content every week, but we're not putting things out in too much detail before each episode. You can read about the management and board and various other things. But I thank everybody for being here and showing the interest. And Jeremy, to you, a special thanks, because this is over 10 years that I and the team have been working, and this is a real highlight for us in our lives, and you've made this a very special day. Thank you.
Oh, it's an honor for me too. As I mentioned, I was very impressed when I got to come down and meet everybody, see the facility, the technology with my own eyes. I've been there, I've seen it. So I wouldn't have had you on if I thought that this wasn't a serious company that's going to seriously better the hobby in time. So congratulations to you on getting to this 10-year point and being ready to launch. And to the audience, thanks everybody for tuning in. We've had very strong viewership all the way through. So thank you guys. Couple of just parting comments from the crowd. Punt, Pass, Click says, thanks for answering the question, Steve. Lee Haskins, great show. We'll be watching the next episode. This topic is very interesting to me to see how a commercial development of this occurs. Kevin James, thanks guys. Great episode. Brendan Ryan, top-notch guest and host. Thank you, Brendan. Francesco says, will there be any upcharging or gouging like we're no more questions like that right now. We're gonna end this. Wiz Collectible, appreciate you sharing this with us tonight and for the hard work over the past decade. Okay, that's it, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Steve, thanks for joining me.
One question is Wiz Collectibles from Wisconsin?
Let us know, Wiz. Let us know. Are you from Wisconsin?
He got that Wisconsin logo there. He and I have a lot in common with me being Big Red, because we have a big rivalry there. So
there you go. Raul says that slab is straight fire, and we're gonna get like Steve deliberately hasn't shown us that slab today. That's coming on episode 2 a week from today, when we will see that slab in its entirety. Okay, that's it, everybody. Thanks for joining. No show on Saturday, but I will be back. Yes, Wiz Collectibles is from Wisconsin. There you go. Okay. I will be back next Tuesday with, it might not be Steve, it'll be someone else from Tag, or more than one, but we'll figure that out, and we'll be back next Saturday. Steve, thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it.